Push to green. Push to green. And then you're going to speak into it.
Good evening. I will now call the March 12th, 2024 meeting of the Ben Lyon School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Amy Tatum, Keena Chadwick, Carrie McPherson Douglas, Cameron Fisher, and Shirley Olson. To my immediate right are Superintendent Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Laura Nordquist, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski, and I am Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Chair of the Board. We also have Daly Arnold from Summit High School and Colin McCracken from Ben Senior High School joining us from the Student Voice Council. Thank you so much for participating. We have Erin Trimble and Hannah Westfalt joining us for ASL interpretation. And as always, the Spanish interpretation of the meeting is being provided on our BLS School Board YouTube page. In order to ensure safety and the ability for the board to focus on its business, we ask that all in audience adhere to the board meeting attendee expectations, and this includes being seated and holding signs under chin level. If there are no available chairs, individuals may wait in the lobby until one is available. Thank you so much. I will now invite people to stand, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. We'll now move into the review of the agenda. And tonight we will have a strong focus on Goal 1, which is academic achievement, as well as Goal 2, which is ensuring our students have a purpose and a plan for their future. With our choice programs and our strategic priorities update. We also have a budget message, which aligns to Goal 4, ensuring that we have systems in place that align with our outcomes to ensure a sustainable organization. With that said, Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Great. Hearing no requests for changes, we will proceed with the agenda as noticed. We'll now move into item 4A, which is the Champion for Students Award, led by Superintendent Cook.
Check. All right, thank you for being here. This evening, we are recognizing one of our music teachers and South County educators, Michael Shavering. Will you please come forward? And a special exciting piece is we have a co-presenter, and she's going to be joined on this side. Okay, I'll move. No, you move. Kaylee Adams, who is the responsible individual for this nomination. So I am so very excited when we have students nominating staff. We want to celebrate that opportunity. And so this is a very, very important moment for us all. All right, for the presentation. Michael has taught in our district for nearly 16 years. That's impressive. All that time in Lapine, and he wears many hats. Choir, band, music director for Lapine Middle School, choir, band, music director for Lapine High School, and head cross-country coach for Lapine Middle School. Do you run with them?
Yes, I do. And I ride my e-bike sometimes.
He's over 16, folks. That's its own conversation. We're here tonight because one of his students, Kaylee Adams, wave Kaylee, took the time to reach out to us with a nomination for her longtime music teacher. I am honored to let Kaylee take it from here.
Good evening. My name is Kaylee, and I'm a student down at Lapine High. I try to keep this as brief as possible, but if you know anything about me, you know that I love to talk. I've been involved in Mr. Shavering's choir program for 6 years now. Over the course of those 6 years, Mr. Shavering has taught me perseverance, patience, and above all else, confidence. It takes a lot to sing in front of a crowd. Mr. Shaw is not only an incredible educator in both choir and band, but he also provides a deeply close and supportive relationship that is made all the better by his relaxed, but still involved personality. The lighthearted environment Mr. Shaw provides us is appreciated by all of his students. And I speak for many when I say that our days would be incomplete without Shaw's jokes, theories, and his classes in general. I personally enjoy the connections Mr. Shaw has with each and every one of his students, as I consider him a friend more than anything else. I believe that is a deeply important quality for a teacher to have. We're very thankful to have Mr. Shaw down at Lapine, and it's for all those reasons and many more that he's very deserving of this award. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, I'm a big fan of jokes. I'm going to give you a warning. If you got one, we'd love to hear it. So hope to start thinking about one. All right, from additional comments from Lapine High School Principal Scott Olszewski. Mr. Shaw is a perfect balance of approachability and authority. He is passionate about music and education more broadly. He is also an awful lot of fun. From Lapine Middle School Principal Brian Behringer. Mr. Shaw is very passionate about serving his students. Being at the middle school and high school, he has the ability to impact student experience for 6 years, from 6th grade to their senior year in high school. His love for music is evident, and you can see it when he is teaching his students. We are very lucky to have him in our building. And honestly, Mr. Shaw, we are lucky to have you in our district, and we are very grateful for you, so thank you. So, Ben Lapine Schools Champion for Students proudly presented on March 12th to Michael Chavarin in appreciation for the huge impact you have had on our students every day, year after year. Your love of music and passion for teaching are apparent, and it is inspiring. Most of all, your students see it and know you care deeply for them, their growth, and their success. We thank you for all your contributions to Lapine students and our community. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, you got the joke? You want the mic?
Oh, no, do I want to, what?
Do you want to tell a joke? He doesn't want to tell a joke. Kaylee, I was supposed to ask you, what instrument do you play?
I don't.
You don't?
My voice is my instrument.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming up here. Thank you, Kaylee. This is very awesome. Thank you. One more round of applause. All right. And that's it for student recognitions.
Thank you so much to both of you, and congratulations. We are going to now move to item number 5, which is our Student Advisory Council report, led by our Student Council leadership.
Hello, my name is Daly, and I'm a junior at Summit High School. I'd like to give you a short update on what SVC is doing, as well as an idea that will improve communication between district leaders and students. But first, a little bit about me. I spend most of my time editing for the student newspaper and running as part of my school's cross-country and track teams. For me, joining the Student Voice Council was a way to share the things I see every day at school, as well as becoming a more active member of the community. Related to community outreach, SVC is looking to recruit new members, and applications are being sent to schools next week. A big part of this process is raising general awareness of who we are and what we do. As a result, we worked on creating a short video about SVC during our last meeting. As students, we understand the frustration surrounding the additional school days. The Student Voice Council aims to provide clarity to the student body and serve as a resource for the district. We believe that when students understand the reasons behind decisions, they are more likely to respect and support them. This is a crucial step in fostering communication and trust between district leaders, parents, and students. Learning in the last meeting about needed instructional hours and extra days that are built into the school calendar is an important first step. As a council, we are committed to developing initiatives to support changes like the makeup days and to creatively educate our peers about the rationale behind these decisions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colin McCracken. I am a senior from Ben Senior High School. I'm the Vice President of Career Development for our school's DECA program, which is the business club that works co-curricular with our school's business classes. I've run distance on the cross-country team and track team for Bend High each year of high school as well. I joined the Student Voice Council to offer a more direct outlet for students at Bend High to be able to communicate their concerns and suggestions to the district and school board. The council also allows for representatives from different schools to evaluate current practices in their schools and provide insight into alternative practices that allow greater efficiency and effectiveness. In our last council meeting, we reviewed current forecasting models to address concerns over the effectiveness of how schools inform students of courses offered by the school and associated course content. We worked in small teams to examine the pros and cons of current models in hopes of establishing greater consistency in curriculum, guides, and forecasting methods throughout the district. The council felt that by establishing greater effectiveness and consistency in forecasting models, student commitment and attendance in class would improve based on students being placed in courses that better reflect their interests. Representatives from Summit High and Bend Tech mentioned that their schools offered a preview day for all students, which consisted of short 10-minute rotations for students to attend classes on the curriculum that interests them. The council concluded that by mainstreaming this method to all schools in the district, students would be able to forecast more representative of their interests prior to being enrolled in the class. The council also examined course catalogs used in various schools. In reviewing similar methods of course catalogs, the council concluded that current course guides were effective in providing detailed descriptions and course requirements. However, some suggested using bullet points to identify the course learning objectives rather than being within the written description. To maintain accuracy in course content, it would also be beneficial for schools to update course catalogs annually or every 2 years. Since most schools in the district have a form of advisory on a scheduled basis during the school year, the council proposes that schools utilize this time leading into forecasting to inform students of elective courses offered by the school through a presentation summarizing available courses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fellow board members, are there any questions based on the report from our Student Advisory Council?
Thank you for focusing on forecasting. We talked a lot about it, and we've talked about it at a couple of your council meetings. And I think that your ideas are really good for both bulletproof, bulleting the key ideas in the courses, and making sure that they are reflected in every school where a course is offered. So thanks for that.
Daly, can you let us know the deadlines for that application window that is open right now?
There we go. Sorry. It should be the end of this month. I think we're still finalizing things, but they'll be sent out soon. So yeah.
Thank you.
Quick question. With regard to the applications, what do you think is going to be one of the best ways to get the word out? Or have you found out already?
We've been talking a lot about this, I think, since we first started meeting. And a big part of it is just tailoring our approach to different schools, I guess. So we've put a lot of that in the hands of the different members at each school. So for some schools that might mean talking at like an assembly, and for other schools that might mean posters or sending out an email announcement. So it's been really varied just based on the school and what the students have felt is most effective. Yeah.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you.
I would also say that I do have a lot of friends that are actually interested in the council, and I believe that my first year when we started up the council, there wasn't as much understanding of what it was, but now that people are understanding that people like us on the council are associated with it, especially people that were involved academically or in athletics, they see that as a good opportunity for us to be able to connect with the district and with the board more efficiently, especially with things that are going on that possibly didn't know about. So they find it as a good opportunity for us.
Colin, I echo Shirley's, just how great your suggestions are. I'm curious if you guys can just talk a little bit about how the forecasting feels like kind of the first one of the first big projects that the whole council coalesced around, worked on for a while, has come to recommendations. Obviously, we haven't seen it implemented yet, but kind of what was the process for picking that out of, I'm sure, many things that council members were probably interested in working on? And did that process work well? Will you change anything about how the council decides, what issues to work on in the future? And then also just curious, it sounds like all the recommendations that you came to, it sounded like it was important to the council that there was consistency across schools. I was just wondering if everyone felt that way, or I was just kind of surprised by that because a lot of times schools want to have their own personalities or try different things, but it sounds like you really coalesced around consistency.
Yeah, so I definitely advocate for uniqueness in different schools. I think the purpose of it, what I see as a very important part of the council is just there's different attributes of different schools that work well, and it could just be depending on that school atmosphere. But we do want to prioritize making a universal methods that are most effective for the students that work in some schools, and we want to make sure that all different schools have access to that approach to gaining information. Specifically, as we talked about forecasting, as we were leading into the upcoming forecasting season, there was a lot of students that especially in the council, we were thinking that there could have been a better approach, especially learning from fellow members, a better approach to actually getting students the information of different courses, especially with courses involved in CTE or just different electives that a lot of students I know hadn't found till later. So we just want to make sure that there's a more efficient way that could have attributes of different schools. Specifically, we talked about Summit and Ben Tech, how they had their day where they got to go around to different classes and see what they were actually doing. So we find that some of these methods are actually going to work well for all schools. So we just wanted to make sure that we have a way to mainstream that.
And I would say, adding on to that, it's not that we want all of the forecasting sheets or pamphlets to look the same, just that we want to create some sort of standard so that the things that we feel are most important are being put on there.
There's nothing wrong with wanting consistency. I just thought it was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we will now move on to number 6, which is our public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of many avenues available to ensure this connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email, as well as in writing. And individual board members also may make themselves available for phone, video, or in-person conversations. I, in fact, had a lovely one this past week, 30 minutes long, but it was just great and so illuminating. This said, I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the board of directors that takes place in the public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. As such, the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person to follow up with you. We'll now open for public comment and hear from stakeholders on topics in the order that they appear on the agenda. Our policy is to typically allow up to 2 minutes per speaker until the time cap has been reached for that agenda item. We typically allow up to 10 minutes of comments per agenda item and 10 minutes of comments on non-agendized items as a whole, for a maximum of 45 minutes of public comment during a meeting. A timer is provided on the large screen and to our virtual attendees to ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. At this time, we will hear from Timothy Harrison.
Oh, thank you. My daughter lives here. My sister, I should say, lives here, and her son, Dr. Matthew Bentz, is a doctor here in the community. I have a personal crusade that I've been going through for some time now. This is a textbook that is the textbook for American government, American history. In some schools in this country, in a lot of other schools, it's not the textbook, because I think any of you who have dealt with the major publishers, they have you in sort of a stranglehold, and they don't offer you a very good product, and you are limited by your procurement limitations with your local restrictions. But what you can do, which is what a lot of school districts have done, is they have these in their library, and the teachers then give adjunct research projects to their clients. What I am proposing to do is, once that you or anyone that you trust has read these, you will come to the same conclusion that I have, and that is that these are superior to anything available to you on the market, whatever it is you've bought, whatever you're going to have coming. And I'm proposing to go, I don't know if you know about the City Club. And the City Club holds itself out, City Club in Central Oregon. Our mission is to foster an informed community through dialogue and education that enhances responsible civic engagement. I'm going to make a challenge grant to them that I will put down, give them $5,000, and for every dollar that they can come up with, to match that or whatever, to buy books, so that not only can the teachers and you all and administrators, but the students in the libraries can have as many of these books as they need for free. You don't have to pay for them. And that way you're not going to be violating any exclusivity agreements that you have with your people that you buy your textbooks from. But I think once each of you has read this or has someone you trust read this, you're going to come to the conclusion that this is a valuable addition to your community, and I hope that I will be remembered fondly for my visit. So I will let you know what this City Club has to say when I get in their face. By the way, I'm much, how can I say this, gratified to look at this picture. I'm one of these people to think there's so much wrong in the world, and the reason for it is that, well, we could solve it by having women be put in charge. So I'm going to have a constitutional convention.
Thank you so much. And your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
All right. And we can't do questions on public comment. And so our next person is Jennifer Sawyer.
Hi. Tell me when. All right. Good evening. My name is Jen Sawyer. I am a campus monitor at Caldera High School, AKA the Mistress of Detention. Before I begin, first off, I'd like to thank you for stepping into this position to serve the community in this capacity. I know it is very challenging at times, and I appreciate it. Tonight, I've come here to ask that there be some consideration for putting on an agenda, changing the minimum standard of on-site grief counseling from what appears to be 2 days to 5 days. As you know, Caldera suffered 2 major tragedies over the course of 40 to 45 days, the most recent one being February 15th. And I can tell you, after being in those halls with those children, 2 days was not enough. We don't tend to get a lot right for the kids these days, and I am pleading with you to do right by these kids and change that minimum standard. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I apologize. Robin Vora was actually our first speaker on our list, and we had some cross-outs of duplicates, and I skipped over that, but Robin Vora will speak to us next. Just do.
Robin Vora, I live here in Bend. I request the schools look into reopening school grounds after school hours when they're not being used by students. They're an important neighborhood resource, a place to exercise, just to be outside. 63% of the neighborhoods in Bend don't have a park within a 10-minute walk of people's homes, according to Trust for Public Lands. Most parks don't have a track, a ball field, or even a basketball court. Schools in Bend and everywhere else have been open and available for public use after hours for decades. In 2007, representing the Orchard District Neighborhood Association, I worked with the the district's facilities manager and principals of Pilot Butte and Juniper to leave specific gates open after school hours for public use. And it also facilitated kids walking to school, which we need more of. It worked well until COVID. A lot of the use was by neighborhood school kids, playground, track, basketball. We took care of the dog poop at Juniper, it's one of the issues, by attaching dog bag dispensers to a fence and warning signs to either pick up the poop or lose access. And it worked. For decades, schools in Bend and elsewhere have not let liability concerns result in closures. I would guess the district's liability policy probably covers after-school use. The Oregon legislature just updated the state's recreation immunity law to include walking, running, and biking on public property. According to Bend Parks and Recreation Director, schools are not liable as long as properties are maintained to state and county health code standards, which I assume they would be, given you have students using them. Children are safer on school grounds than they are in neighborhood streets. Many residents don't have kids in school. The district would get more support, including for the levy, if more could enjoy public property. Please direct school administration to open school grounds after school hours. And if I can make an unrelated comment about Pilot Butte and Neff.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you, Robin. All right. We are going to continue. Thank you to all of our public commenters. We really appreciate you coming forward. We are going to now move into number 7, which is our consent for action agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
The motion has been approved or moved by Director Tatum. It has been seconded by Director McPherson Douglas. Is there any request to remove anything from the consent agenda? Hearing no request to remove, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. We'll now move into the consent for information, and this will be led by Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. In your board book, you will find that we have 2 policies that are coming back after quite a bit of action and comment. I'm going to start with the first one, policy IKFAR, and that is the high school diplomas, graduation requirements, and graduation exercises. Excuse me, let me get to the right sheet here. We received just a few comments, and I would tell you that the one comment that we got was in alignment with why the policy was first directed in the first place, which is preventing students, only allowing capstone classes or not allowing capstone classes to be considered a part of the honors diploma was preventing students from completing their CTE pathways. The action of acting and to let those now coordinate with that has been fixed by this policy, and we are now in a place where we are ready to adopt this policy. The second one, this one's it's presented a little awkwardly, so I want to talk about this for just a second. KGB-AR, if you recall, was a policy that we started talking about a couple of months ago. It's public conduct on district property, and one of the impetus for this policy was the conversation we had, I think 3 months ago, about whether or not e-bikes had a place in our policy language, whether or not we needed to take a formal stance. And so what you'll see here is 2 different versions of the policy, KGB, AR, because we believed that the original version needed to be referenced in the board book so that you could determine what the public feedback that we received on it and how it was referenced. And then we took that feedback, and one of the comments, I think it was made by Chair Barnes-Delakia perhaps, that it could use some reorganization, and we couldn't see a pathway through reorganizing it without having the referenced document so that the public comments made sense. This While there's a lot here, I will tell you that the primary impetus for this one coming back in this form was to effectively eliminate e-bikes ridden by students at our elementary schools and our middle schools. This would not preclude adults that are of age riding e-bikes to our schools, but what it does do is set a standard that e-bikes have to be, well, not just e-bikes, but scooters and other things as well. But that this policy captures the language that now leads to the practice that we will be instituting in the upcoming weeks as we work on our communication plan that's going to effectively disallow illegal use of e-bikes and possession of them on our elementary schools and middle schools. So if you have questions, I'm glad to answer any of those questions. It also, there's a lot of other language in there too, things like drone usage and other stuff, but the primary reason for this was the conversation we had some time ago about e-bikes.
Thank you. I would just like to say that I appreciate the work that the district has been doing in this very gray area. I know that the district is also going to start a campaign, that there will be signage at our different schools. And so really, this is a community ask. If you're a parent and your child is underage, please don't send them with an e-bike or an e-scooter because those are no longer allowed on our campuses.
And I would tell you that the signs will be out shortly. We've got communication plans to go out and talk about transitioning effectively out of this and providing a little bit of an on-ramp for folks to arrange for transportation where it's necessary. We intend to have this implemented after spring break. It'll come along with a lessons over advisory for that once we return back from spring break to make sure that it's clearly understood before we would taking it in a little bit of a different direction. And so our goal is to not to punish, but to educate, and we'll continue to educate on this. And hopefully our communication efforts will be seen as a public renewal of the conversation. I think this conversation is most certainly not over. It is definitely something we've talked about quite a bit with our administrators at both the elementary level and the secondary level.
And Dr. Cook, just a reminder for us and the public that the way this policy was written essentially says that we will uphold state law with regards to e-bikes, correct? So
That is correct.
if state law were to change, this policy would automatically adjust to continue to support state law.
That is correct. There's one place where we actually got to, if for example, there was talk earlier in the legislative session about the possibility of letting a Class A e-bike be allowable to be ridden by youth under the age of 16. We would have to change one phrase if that became necessary. The way it's currently, we tried to write it in a way that would be agnostic of laws changing. We couldn't find a way to resolve that one issue. So there would be one place we would have to go back and make some modification if something were to change. But the way that the law is enacted as it stands currently right now, everything is compliant with this policy.
Thank you. So we will now move on to item 9A, which is our choice programs led by Deputy Superintendent Dr. Laura Nordquist.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. I'm just going to talk for a second and turn it over to our talented teams from Bend Senior High School, from Bend Tech Academy, and from the Dual Immersion Program. Paul and Lakeisha and Kinsey, I'm not sure who's moral support and who's presenting, so if you guys would present your team as you speak tonight. There we go. Thank you. Just briefly, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our board goal number 1, that all our students have a strong academic foundation, and really focus that discussion on rigor. And the reason that we're featuring the 3 programs that we are, 2 of them are really models of rigor for all students. And the IB program at Bend Senior High, which is I don't want to call it an elite program, but it's a very demanding program that not all students participate in. Bend Senior High has been working very hard in looking at an expansion of IB programming called the Career Related Program, which is a broad expansion of IB programming for students, and it's very exciting. So I'm thrilled for you to hear about that. So our board goal number 1, all students are engaged and develop a strong academic foundation. I think one of the mistakes we make sometimes is when we hear the word foundation, we think about basic skills, that our students, early literacy is part of a foundation, numeracy skills are part of a foundation. But if we think about foundations, they're things that have the strength to hold whatever comes next. And so when I think about what a foundation is, it's what prepares you for whatever pathway your life takes. And I say that because it's important that all our students have the opportunity for a rigorous and relevant education. And we know we have work to do. And that's why it's exciting to hear some of the great work that's happening in our programs. Sometimes when we use the word rigor, it can be defined lots of ways. And one of the worst tendencies is to think of rigor as indicating more work, more assignments. And so I just took a second to talk about the characteristics of a rigorous classroom. And we want to think about you have to have the appropriate classroom culture. And I don't like the word safe spaces because some of our students never feel totally safe in our spaces. But I think instead of brave spaces where they can take risks, they can fail, and they will feel that support. That there are visible norms for not just how teachers interact with students, but how students interact with one another. And that there's a strong spirit of collaboration. We are in this together. Together, we will succeed. And then I want to talk a second about students' mindset. We heard earlier tonight, in talking about Mr. Chauverin, that idea of students persevering. When you persevere, that's a behavior, and behaviors come from mindsets. So when we think about what is an academic mindset, it means a student believes, I belong in this academic community. Not just that I belong at Caldera High School, but I as a student of color belong in a calculus classroom. I as a female student belong in an advanced computer programming class, that I have that sense of belonging in the academic setting. A second characteristic is this work has meaning to me. I care about the work. A third characteristic of an academic mindset is that I can be successful at this work. I believe that I can succeed. And the fourth is that my success is a result of my effort. I have control over that. So that culture, that teacher mindset helps produce those student academic mindsets. And then we talk about a curriculum rooted in meaningful standards. One of the criticisms of curriculum in this country is that we tend to be broad and shallow. And so thinking really about that slower, deeper work as our secondary teachers are working on power standards, that's work that's related to thinking about those meaningful standards, that slower, deeper work. We can talk about lots of things in a framework for instruction, but I listed active engagement, that the students own their learning, that they're active participants in their learning, clear learning intentions and success criteria, the strong use of formative assessment. Students get to try and fail and try and partially succeed before we have culminating assessments. And again, tonight was a perfect example of the teacher mindset that we're looking for when we recognize Michael, because it's that warm demander. I believe so strongly in you, and I have such confidence in your talent that I will not let go until you're successful. And I think we saw that exemplified as Kaylee talked about her teacher. And then finally, the teacher has to have the knowledge and skills of their content, their pedagogy. So just with that mindset then, I'm going to turn it over to Lakeisha Clark to talk about Ben Tech Academy. Oh, and if we could save questions to the end, because we have 3 teams presenting.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come talk about Ben Tech Academy. I am new to this community, and I have to say that my time at Ben Tech has been amazing, and I'm looking forward to all of the amazing potential that we have and just the programming that we have here. So I really briefly, for people who are not aware of what Ben Tech Academy is, we are one of the 2 choice option high schools in Ben Lapine schools. We are really going to be defined by our innovative and specialized programming around career and technical education. These programs are designed to provide choice for students and families in the type of education their students receive. Both Ben Tech and Realms High School, the other choice high school, are in person. They are academically rigorous programs with AP, advanced programming to prepare students for both college and career. We also offer innovative and specialized academic opportunities for students who are interested in our academies that we have. So again, Ben Tech Academy is focused around career and technical education, which is programming designed to help students kind of really explore different areas in careers and provide the academic and technical skills they might need as they pursue those beyond high school. These industry areas are considered to be high demand, high wage career paths by the state and federal employment department. We offer 4 academies. We have a medical academy, STEM and engineering, business management, and construction. And our goal is that by the time students reach their junior year, they have determined which of these programs they are most interested in diving into even deeper along the way. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how rigor and relevance are really highlighted through our programming that we have. Each academy is going to offer students skills and in those classes that are going to require them to problem solve, to apply their learning, and to develop technical skill. In each of these programs, the work that they are doing becomes highly technical and is, I think, things that we often don't think high school students are going to be doing. So I just will point out in the top corner up here, we have students practicing suturing there. Through our medical academy, they have the ability to practice that as one of the skills that they have. So our core curriculum here at Ben Tech is rigorous. We do offer advanced mathematics. We have multiple courses in math and science and language arts that are all dual credit opportunities for students to earn college credit along the way. We also have AP coursework for students who are interested in pursuing that. In our medical academy, our capstone projects include our health occupations class, where students are actually doing rotations and they're working at they're shadowing at St. Charles, at Cora. They expand and they go out and do short, brief stints with veterinary clinics, pediatricians' offices, and more. And so our students are really gaining experience and an understanding of a wide variety of what it means to be in the medical field so that they have choice and they're really deciding what they want to do with their life. In our STEM engineering program, we have a drones class and an advanced drones class, which is a lot of fun to walk through the gym and have them whizzing by your head throughout the day. But one of the things that can happen is it's very much aligned with the commercial drones pilots licensing, so students are able to earn that at the conclusion of the course. In fact, we had one student take his class and his test and pass it over in December, which is very exciting. We also have advanced courses in design lab, robotics, and then, as I said, drones. We also offer things like dual credit opportunities through our math and language arts and science classes that are articulated through COCC and Klamath Community College. And those, even now, we've been working on how to expand those offerings in our programming for next year. And then we do, as with all high schools, extended option partnerships, where we have some students at Ben Tech Academy who are actually taking college classes through COCC right now while they're still in high school. When we talk about rigor and that complex, that idea of deep thinking, I really like the way you said that. It is about thinking deeper than just kind of completing tasks. And most of the time when we are talking about career and technical programming, oftentimes people talk about hands-on learning. But I believe that hands-on activities require context and relevance to be meaningful learning. And that is something that you will find in our classrooms here. Our program, Dr. Cadino, who runs our medical academy, students will take their CPR and first aid class. It's one of the early classes students take in that CTE programming. And so by the time we're done, I think right now we probably have close to 50% of our student body who have their first aid and CPR certifications through the courses that they've been taking. They learn how to draw blood, intubate, suture, and that may not be something they're doing while they're on their rotations, but it is something that they learn how to do now, so they can identify if you've got an issue with blood. Now's the time to know, right? We also expand into more than just what people might think of as traditional medical fields. So there's a wilderness first aid class where students will learn relevant and valuable skills while they're out in the wilderness setting, and in a place like Central Oregon where being outdoors is such a huge part of our culture. What an amazing opportunity. And we will be expanding that next year into a search and rescue course as well. So, and then again, our students are on rotations, which means they're actually out in hospitals, in doctors' offices, observing the different types of things that they might explore within the medical field. In our construction academy, our students learn how to properly use equipment in a shop. Not just what you might see in a standard construction shop, but also technology-based equipment such as CNC routers, laser engravers, and programming. So we have just a couple of the things up there that they have been making over the course of this year. They also practice practical builds. You can see up in the top corner where they were practicing framing one day. In fact, in the fall, Mrs. Loper took a group of students to the framing competition in Redmond, Oregon, where they practiced and demonstrated their skills in front of community partners and businesses. They also will explore fine woodworking skills, again, to explore the many different ways in which you might pursue a career in working within the construction field. And then our business academy is a lot of fun. You got to meet them last month when the students brought the t-shirts that they had designed and made for our school resource officers. Our students have a full production lab in our building where they make t-shirts. They have screen printing. They have a heat press. They have an embroidery machine that they are currently learning how to use right now. And one of the things that this does is it allows them to do a lot of work with community and school partners in designing logos, in working with small businesses regarding how they develop their logos and how they update them, how to use that type of programming or like computer stuff that they do to design it all. I'm not a designer. And so this year, just some of the things, they've worked with the Department of Veteran Affairs here in Bend, Oregon, Jewel Elementary. They made all of their staff t-shirts at the start of the year and personalized them all with their name. Mountain View High School and High Desert ESD, they've worked with all of them to develop these different gear that they've produced. They also have relevant opportunities through DECA. In fact, we sent our 6 students up to the competition, the state competition, and in fact, KB, who's there in the middle, is going to be a state representative. She will be one of the vice presidents of hospitality, one of 6 students in the state of Oregon. And then we have a lot of community-based programming that our students do, such as blood drives. We have one coming up this week. And then this Saturday, they are hosting BTA Madness, which is a 3x3 tournament for middle school students. that will be happening all day on Saturday on our campus. In addition to that, I want to just say, I hadn't known this when I put the presentation together, but we have a group of students that Ms. Peters has been working with, volunteering together, that went to the Hatfield Justice project, where they are presenting about issues that are relevant to our time and to the future. Our students, based on that presentation, are one of 6 teams from across the state of Oregon that will present next weekend, March 22nd and 23rd, and they are presenting regarding the fentanyl crisis in Oregon among youth. So again, the teachers are providing these really relevant opportunities for students to have meaningful learning. So just a little plug, we are still open. We still do have some spots available for 24-25. We are continuing to educate our community that BenTech Academy is no longer Marshall High School. And as you can see, our teachers and staff are really diving into how we might be able to offer a really amazing experience for kids on this small campus. We provide a very creative learning environment through the CTE academies and our core classes. And so this is just one example of rigor and relevance through CTE here in Bend Lapine Schools. Thank you. So I think, am I just passing it on?
Thank you so much.
yes.
I think Kinsey Martin is next.
Good evening. I'm excited to get to share with you a bit about our dual language immersion program, and I'm going to have 2 expert teachers share mostly with you. First, I just wanted to do a little setup and note that we're trying to keep it to 10 minutes, so we're going to give you a pretty broad overview, but the 3 of us get really excited about this topic, so anytime you want to talk more, please reach out, or if you want to come visit, even better. The program is a K-12 program model. We've talked about it before, so I won't go too far in depth with it. But the instructional model is half and half English-Spanish, starting with about 80% Spanish at kindergarten for all students, working up to half and half around 3rd, 4th grade, and then staying half and half through high school graduation. The student population that we serve is also half and half. That's a little less, it's a little more artificial of a split, just recognizing that it's impossible to categorize a family as English speaking or Spanish speaking. There's students who speak other languages, many families who don't fall neatly into those designations. But more or less, we have half of the population of students in the program are English speakers when they start, and half are Spanish speakers, and when they exit, they're all both. And the majority of our students, represented by this picture, our first cohort, the majority started with us in kindergarten. In each of our cohorts, you'll find that of the typically about 50, 55 students in each cohort, the vast majority of them started when they were 5 years old and will be graduating from the program. We do add students throughout the program. We'll talk a little bit about that, but the majority of this group is our first graduating class from Bend High last year. Most of those faces started with us at Bear Creek 13 years before that picture. And then you'll notice pictures throughout our slides. Those are of that graduating class as well, and some of our staff. Tonight, though, we're going to focus mostly just on the 9 through 12 section of the program, so pretty specific to high school. The coursework that students take currently, and I'll explain later some shifts that we're exploring, but currently students take 2 core content classes at each grade level. So at the freshman level, that means PE Health is offered in Spanish, which, you know, we wondered how that would go and found it's been really amazing as far as their interaction in health classes and PE classes. The language and vocabulary that they're learning is really meaningful and authentic. So PE Health, and then history class is offered in Spanish as well. So they're getting a lot of literacy skills embedded into that, language skills, and then the same high school standards for the social studies class that all other students get too. They're just getting it in Spanish. And then sophomore through senior year, we offer a variety of continuing some health and PE, some history classes. Their junior year, they take AP Spanish. Every single kid in the dual language program takes AP Spanish. That's something that we wondered about, will all kids feel comfortable and ready? And we're working on how do we as adults make sure that all kids feel welcome and ready and supported throughout that process. They also take a translation interpretation course. So they're starting as juniors to think about this gift of language that they have and how they want to maybe use it socially or professionally, and some pretty neat internships and practices and things they're doing within that class. And then they culminate with a seminar class where they're doing a big research project, kind of action research. Many of them go back and work with our elementary students and or explore topics in the community related to their cultural and linguistic skills and sort of put it all together, develop some portfolio work, and look back at the last 13 years of their journey. We are exploring changes to the coursework, and I'll speak to that at the end, but we are still committed to, at the high school stage, those couple of core content classes offered in Spanish at each grade. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a couple of our teachers and coordinator here tonight. They're going to explain a little bit more about the impact of the program on our students and our families. These teachers represent our broader team. We have an incredible team of bilingual educators. They represent, I haven't counted super recently, but last I counted a couple years ago, we had at least 7 different Spanish-speaking countries represented by our staff, a host of different, lived experiences and identities and accents and cultures that our students are exposed to and that our colleagues get to, work with across the work that we do. And so I just want to recognize our teachers and how critical they are to the success of our immersion model and program, because they probably won't tell you that. So I want to make sure that, that I point that out before you hear from them. So with that, I'm going to introduce Maria Vidas.
Hi, my name is Maria Vidas. I primarily spend my day in Ben Lompoc Schools at High Desert Middle School teaching Spanish language arts. I'm also the dual immersion secondary program coordinator. I also want to introduce Colina Huate Garcia, who's of course here to answer any questions. I'll do most of the speaking for the most part of the presentation, but it's also thanks to her that we have a lot of this data, so I want to highlight that. As Kenzie said, that our students are a mix of English-speaking households, coming from English-speaking households and coming from Spanish-speaking households, but within that heritage Spanish-speaking profile that our students bring, we also have a large and significant Purépecha speaking population, and we'll, of course, highlight and celebrate that within a lot of the work that we do in the program. Within the dual immersion program, and this is part of the work that I do as the secondary program coordinator, is fielding those late entry to do the dual immersion program inquiries. And so there's a couple of different points of access, one of them being students who are new to Ben Lompoc Schools and have been in dual immersion programs from other districts, and that we have welcomed 2 students with that profile this year. We also have a late entry process that is similar to for those students accessing it from other dual immersion programs elsewhere, for heritage speakers who've been in English classrooms, in English language classrooms throughout their career, who are seeking access and entry into the program. And so those 4 of our current high school dual immersion students access the program that way. And then, of course, we are welcoming newcomers into the program, which is a very specific term relevant to students who have just entered into the U.S. education system and are here in Ben Lompoc Schools, coming from Spanish-speaking countries in this case. And what we're seeing is a really significant growth in commitment from that transition from 8th to 9th grade. Of course, honored to be here with BenTech Academy as well as the IB program. Quite sincerely, a lot of students who choose to continue into a different high school, they're looking at choice options across the distance, and so recognizing that I think that there is a partnership there as well within the program, but we are seeing that commitment growing from 8th to 9th. Right now we have 1 student who is slated to go to Mountain View and leave the program at this point, so we're really grateful and excited to see that commitment. Of course, the hallmark of our program is that building those bilingual and biliterate skills over the 13 years that our students are in the program. If they started in kindergarten, then the opportunities to really hone, finalize, and then of course obtain that recognition as they're continuing on to graduation. And so the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy is of course an honor that is accessible to all graduates in Oregon. However, that is one of the steps on our way to the Gold Seal of Biliteracy in our Ben Lapine Schools dual immersion program. And so 77% of our dual immersion graduates in that first cohort obtained the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy. And again, we're seeing that growth even from one year to the next, even considering that now the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy, in order to qualify, there is an English requisite as well. And so we're on 90% are on track. We're of course aiming for 100%. Then we also have the Ben Lapine Schools Gold Seal of Biliteracy, which is sort of the culminating piece to their journey in the dual immersion program. It's a lot about reflection and what it's meant to them to be a part of the program. It's also about fine-tuning those skills and those pieces of their profile as they continue in their career, whether academic or professional career, building, of course, their resume and a cover letter both in English and in Spanish, as well as giving back to the community with community service and an action research project. And so again, since that first requisite is the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy, often then we see parallel data then. So in 2023, 77% again qualified for the Gold Seal of Biliteracy, and then this year, of course, we've got 100% on track because we're still pushing them hard to qualify for the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy and all of the other benchmarks. The pathway to obtain the Oregon State Seal of Biliteracy within the dual immersion program is that AP Spanish Language and Culture course. As Kinsey mentioned, 100% of our dual immersion students enroll in that course and take that test. That's in 11th grade. In our current 11th grade cohort, that means 60% of our dual immersion students who are all enrolled in the AP course and exam are heritage Spanish speakers. And I was just, triple checking our lists as well in collaboration with Caldera just this morning and seeing that the vast majority of the students at Caldera who are signed up for that test are our dual immersion students as well, just making sure that everybody's got everything squared away as we approach that test date. And we see the impact, of course, in our 12th grade cohort with this data as well, that when they have that door to those AP courses, they're continuing to take AP courses. And so the average AP enrollment on our 12th grade cohort is 3.6 AP classes over the 3 years at Caldera, recognizing that this current 12th grade cohort had their freshman year at Bend High. And then, of course, to kind of recognize too that for some students that does mean that they are only taking that one required AP class as part of the dual immersion program, but for many of them it means upwards of 8. And of course that translates to that average weighted GPA as well, seeing that in the 12th grade cohort it is 3.35. Really the highlight though is seeing what it means to our students and the impact that the program has had on our students' experiences. And so of course that academic focus to begin with, seeing, of course, highlighting learning in their first language, if Spanish is their first language, as you can see in these quotes, being challenged to think in 2 languages. We saw it in additional student data, the capacity to recognize multiple perspectives that comes with bilingualism and with the focus of the dual immersion program, the pedagogical focus. And then I also just want to highlight representation is really important for our dual immersion students as well. And so that academic focus, we know that for some students it's hard just to get to school, and having Ms. Wate Garcia, another former dual immersion teacher, Ms. Baltodano, one of our students who started in the dual immersion program, late entry, started in 9th grade, referenced having teachers that look and sound like her being a huge part of what was helping her get to school every day. And she's one of our most outstanding students, I think, at this juncture in the program academically. Wait, I forgot, I have the clicker. It's also, of course, about community and belonging. And so that commitment for students, especially who've been in the program for 13 years, it's no secret, I think, that a lot of the students that seek late entry, they're familiar faces already in our dual immersion classrooms, whether that's at the secondary or the high school level. And they recognize that commitment to one another. A lot of the student data had spoke to the shared values of the program as well. Also recognizing the teachers who have stuck with them, because we have a really special opportunity where we are continuing with our students in a lot of junctures in the program, especially at the high school level. And then lastly, just wanting to highlight that student agency and leadership. That came out a lot in the feedback from students as well, of why they stuck with it, and them recognizing that their feedback has been integral to our responsiveness as a program as well. And so for them to exit our program with that sense of agency, with those bilingual and biliterate skills and the intercultural competencies that we're fostering with them into the professional world and higher academics, we're just really excited to see how far they take their learning, and for them to recognize too, this is just the second cohort of the program, but for them to recognize their agency and then to see responsiveness on our part as well within the program. And I just wanted to highlight one last quote, because I think that that sense of belonging, the focus on our heritage speakers and that agency really is highlighted in this last student quote. This is a student who's been in the program since kindergarten. Overall, the DI program has helped me express myself in a more presentable and formal manner, which allows me to help people who didn't have the privilege of doing so, which at time also applies to my literature writing classes. For me, the best part would be the community. In a sense, the DI program brings a lot of struggling families together and offers them an opportunity to become bilingual. And with that, I will leave it.
I just was noticing in one, I'm gonna go back and hopefully not make you seasick here. I just wanted to point out in one of the pictures, the medal that student is wearing around her neck are students who earn the Ben Lapine School's Gold Seal of Biliteracy, earn that medal to wear at graduation. And Colina, Miss Watley Garcia's class, designed what that medal looks like. It's a pretty neat artifact for them to take beyond their years with us. So they also have t-shirts they've been designing and all kinds of pretty neat projects there. So they have a lot of investment in who they are. They're also working, I understand, on some decorations for their caps at graduation. So that sense of identity and togetherness is pretty strong. Just thinking about next steps and looking ahead, continuing to support our teachers. Those are three amazing teachers. Steph Bonnie on the left is our other program coordinator, counterpart to Maria Vidas. Anna Wright, you all have met before. She went through our Alternative Pathways program to become a dual language classroom teacher, and Jessica Sanchez Milar teaches our translation interpretation course. That course is one that we are looking at. She's a trained healthcare interpreter and used to teach that program, run that program up at COCC, and so we are incredibly fortunate to have her expertise teaching that class. We're working on developing that course into some options where kids can pursue certification. So the class by itself is amazing, but how we get them, under the CTE umbrella, starting to move into some certification options for them is a next step with that class. And then other high school coursework, we are exploring the possibility of adding 2 more AP classes to the required trajectory at the high school stage. I'm having a lot of conversations about what would that look like for students? What does that look like for instructors? How do we offer those classes in a bilingual Spanish-only format? How do we make sure that teachers feel supported in that process and that all students are lifted up in accessing that level of rigor? But to Maria's point, we've required a class already, and they've really stepped up and done well with that. And so we're looking at AP Seminar and AP Research. So that combined with AP Spanish Language would give them a set of 3 AP courses in the program. So more to come on that, but that's sort of in development within the high school stage of the program. Anything you want to add? Okay, I think we'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Paul Hutter. I'm one of the assistant principals at Ben High School. Actually, before I begin, I just want to say, Colin, I just want to say, nice job with critiquing your father, who's a counselor, about how counselors reach out about forecasting. I thought that was really brave of you. Just wanted to point that out. Great job of really thinking about how your dad's performing. Nice work. I'm Paul Hutter. I'm one of the assistant principals at Benton High School. I'm joined by Kristen Kitt, who is one of the IB coordinators, and Lisa Cowan, who is our CT coordinator, and our fearless leader, Chris Reese, who is our principal at Benton High. I'm going to talk just a little bit about kind of the journey of where we are right now, how we got here, and a little bit about maybe what might be in our future. And I've been at Benton High School for 18 years. I started out teaching science, and I've been involved in the IB program for about 15, 16 years or so. Kristen Kitt and I have been working together on IB for a number of years. And one of the things that we noticed, kind of going back, was students were being forced to think about either taking CTE classes and kind of exploring a career, or maybe having to take an IB class. And there wasn't really room to do both, especially if you were really thinking about doing the IB diploma. And so it kind of felt a little bit like Kristen and I in the IB silo were really working almost against and not with Lisa Cowan, with our CTE folks. And so I wouldn't say it wasn't adversarial at all, but we would love to have more of a vision where we're all working together instead of feeling like we've got these two concurrent pathways. So what is it that we might be able to do that would allow us to kind of blend these two things? So Kristen and I were speaking, gosh, it was probably about 3 years ago, and we learned about something called a career-related program. It's an IEB, International Baccalaureate program at the high school level. But what it does is it allows for students to explore careers with also accessing kind of the rigor of some of the IB coursework and maybe earning some college credit along the way. So we took it seriously. Kristen and I and Lisa, a couple other folks from Ben Lapine, we went up and did some, we asked some questions at Southridge High School, which has a CP and DP program. We started looking into what might that look like to run both at the same time. It's a relatively new program, the CP program. And I think we became really, really excited because what it does is it gives students an opportunity to do both, because it incentivizes students to go ahead and explore through an a CTE pathway. And we have a number of CTE pathways at our school, but also encourages them to take at least 2 IB classes at the same time. Part of that, and Kristen's going to go into this in a bit more depth, is also part of the other skills of when you're looking at career or exploring a career. What are the personal and professional skills that go along with that? What are the reading and writing and math skills that we want? What are the communication skills? So there's a lot of pieces that really dovetail really well. And we feel like the CP program might be kind of the bridge that we're looking for that blends we're incredibly proud of the IB program and the CT, but it might really help us to bring these two things together and provide all of our students more opportunities to kind of think about what would it be like to become a teacher, or to have a construction company, or to go down the culinary pathway, and at the same time prepare myself for the rigors of college. So I'm going to pause there and bring up Kristen Kitt. She's going to talk more about what the CP program is, and then I'm going to talk a little bit after her about some of the updates that we're seeing from the state of Oregon.
Okay, thank you guys for allowing us to be here today. So I just want to make sure I'm not assuming that everybody knows the ins and outs of what we currently offer for the IB program, and then I want to kind of reiterate what Paul is referencing and kind of connecting these two robust programs that we have working at Ben High and how we can get those programs together in our future. So the IB program as it stands is accessible to all of our students here at Ben High School, and what we have on the board there is a list of our IB classes.
And students work towards these classes traditionally by their junior and senior year, they'll access this coursework. All of this coursework is dual credit, so if they go in and take the IB examination, they can earn college credit. And what you'll see at the bottom there is just a sample articulation. And I know it's hard to read, but it's a sample articulation of an example if a student takes a higher level or standard level IB math class. The articulation to the far right there is for Oregon State University. And you'll see that our IB classes articulate from anywhere from 4 to 12 credits. And a lot of our students who are in what we call the IB diploma program, which is a diploma program in which they take 6 IB courses, and they also participate in what we call CAS, Creativity, Activity, and Service, which includes a CAS project to show that our students are working beyond their academics, but they're also working within our community and within themselves. That gets put together and they test in their coursework that they've chosen through the IB program. And then ultimately, a lot of our students will start as sophomores in the universities because they've acquired college credit through their 6 different classes. But with that being said, the program at Ben High currently has, this testing year, we'll have over 219 students testing in 1 or more IB classes. So these are students that are accessing IB, not just IB diploma students. Our cohort this year, although it is the biggest we've seen at 52, does not actually make up our entire IB program. And as we were meeting today, we were recognizing, if we have 219 students coming through, and we're always looking to grow that number, of course. We want every student to experience the rigor and the success of an IB class and really dig into that inquiry-based learning. But we also want our students to recognize that if they're already taking a couple IB classes, they've chosen a rigorous path here, could they also be exploring the 8 different CTE pathways that we have available at Ben High School? And coming full circle, when we were meeting this earlier today, we recognized that we have a lot of students that are already taking 2 IB classes or more. And so what the career program, and actually let me switch slides here. And so what the IB career-related program is it's asking students to go ahead and explore those pathways, right? Do you want to work through the culinary? Do you want to work through construction? Do you want to work through engineering or graphic design or those different things that we have to offer? And then what can we supplement academically in the core content areas to really boost that experience? So maybe if we have students moving through the construction pathway, they could challenge themselves by taking an IB math class. So that would be one of their 2 IB courses. And then the other part of the career-related program is that IB asks that they continue to study a second language, but they also acknowledge that we have students who are already bilingual, and so they can actually receive credit for that second language that they practice, whether it's Spanish or English or other, and they can record hours and get credit for language in that way. But overall, the career-related program asks that our students complete our CTE pathway, 1 or more. They take 2 IB classes over the course of 2 years. Not all of our IB classes are 2 years long, but starting around that junior year, they'll access those IB classes. And then they also do what we call a personal and professional skills course, and that's where they start to reflect on a service learning project. And that could be the internship or the job opportunities that they're already receiving in our CTE programs. And Lisa Cowan is actually here to answer more questions about that if you have them at the end of this presentation. But through their service learning, they're then going to be in a class called personal and professional skills. And that's where they start to reflect on these experiences and where they want to go with them next. And so we put all that together in the reflective project, paired with language development, and then paired with 2 IB classes, and we get what we call the Careers Program Diploma. And it hosts just as much rigor, we believe, as the IB diploma program does, but it serves students in a different way. We have students that often by their sophomore year, when we start accessing, their classes and say, are you interested in the IB program? They're debating, they're thinking, well, I really want to do the IB diploma, but I also really want to explore the CTE pathway. So that's where this, kind of brainstorm and invested interest in the careers program is coming from. How do we get those students to not have to make necessarily that decision anymore? So I'm going to pass it back over to Paul.
I get excited thinking about this. I imagine we've got a couple of student teachers at Ben High School, a married couple that started out in my science class. And I think about what if we had an opportunity to kind of grow our own and provide students, we have a CTE pathway in education. So what if we found students that were interested in whether it's culinary or education or whatever their passion is, what if we could give them that and then also let them choose to take a couple IB classes and then really explore through some service learning? I think that would be amazing. The last thing I just want to touch on is something that's kind of interesting. The state of Oregon just passed, Dr. Cook and Dr. Norquist, we were talking about this yesterday. The state of Oregon just passed just a couple of days ago. It was House Bill 4137, which basically allows school districts to allow the IB diploma or the CP diploma to suffice for a diploma from the state of Oregon. So I'm not quite sure what we as a district will decide on that and how that might impact us, but it could potentially provide additional opportunities toward graduation while students are accessing rigorous coursework and planning for their passion. So I thought that was kind of interesting that had just come up. Right now, there are only 3 schools in the state of Oregon that currently have the CP program, so we would be on kind of the cutting edge and on the beginning of this for the state of Oregon. Right now, the state of Oregon, most of the public universities, all the public universities, do award scholarships for earning your diploma. It is my opinion, I think in the near future, we'll probably see CP being recognized in the same way. So with that, I think I'll stop there, and if you do have questions, we're happy to answer, but thank you very much for your time.
I just want to start by thanking all of you. I think as board members, we each have had individual conversations with different people that presented tonight, but for all of us to hear these really cutting edge programs in our district that are supporting our kids and their passion, purpose, and plan for their future, I mean, I can't applaud your work more. So thank you. But if there are questions from our board.
I have a question about newcomers and the dual immersion program. One of the things that I have heard that happens in our schools quite often are students come who have no basis for English and they are dropped into a middle school or a high school that is not the dual immersion program, and they are using Google Translate and really struggling, and office staff is struggling because we don't often have translators and people who speak Spanish on site at all of our schools. So my question is, how do we reach out to those newcomer students? Are they all offered admission to the dual immersion program? If you could just kind of talk about that process.
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer that succinctly because this is another topic I get really excited about. And there's a lot, I think, that you asked within that question. So I'll give kind of a general answer. So Maria referenced that our dual immersion program does accept late entry. So, typically students start in kindergarten and work their way through. But, inevitably a family moves out of town, things happen. And, some students might select it at the incoming 9th grade or incoming 6th grade, a different option for them. And so we occasionally do have spaces open in the program. And at that point, if we get a newcomer, newly arriving into our community, we can add them to the dual immersion program. There are many considerations that go into that. One is primarily family and student interest, if that's something they want. And occasionally we'll get a family who says, we don't want that, we want all English. Most of the time families are interested when we explain what the bilingual model is. Sometimes access is an issue if they live, over by Skyview and the middle school stage of the program is at High Desert. There is transportation, but it's not door-to-door service, and sometimes that's hard. Our transportation team is amazing and works miracles when they can, but transportation, depending on where you live, can be inhibiting for sure as far as participation. And then, and often our cohorts are full. So we've accepted newcomers into, I think, almost every grade level, even this year, but there is a point where, we don't have hard caps, but there is a point where if we just took every single newcomer, we'd probably lose Kalina and many of our teachers. So there is a point, we keep our numbers within the average range of class size for the rest of the district. And so there is a point where we have to say there just isn't any more space. It's not as easy as, oh, let's just create an extra section because of the unique staffing and curriculum that comes to play. So often we fill up and then we have newcomers who continue to arrive. The issue then becomes, sometimes if they're at the high school stage, we can offer them a space in our newcomer program designed for newcomer students. It is, bilingual education, very sheltered, supported, lots of support to get credits very quickly. It's really effective for students who we call them SIFE. That's a state designation that stands for Students with Interrupted Formal Education. So we get many students showing up in the district who, maybe 17 years old and they haven't had the opportunity to be in school since they were in second grade. And so and our job is to support them and make sure that they learn and have opportunities and graduate. And we've actually done that with some kids, being very creative with programming and supports. And harnessing the amazing strengths that those students bring into our system too. But there are also students who either both the dual immersion program and the newcomer program are not good options for them. They might be a middle school student, and so the newcomer program isn't an option for them. That's a high school only program. Or the family doesn't want it, or both are full, a variety of different reasons where a student ends up at a different school. All of our schools have language specialists and family liaisons who have specialized expertise to support those students in their transition. It's never enough. I mean, our newcomer students, our new families, and I would extend that to many other, our students who are experiencing houselessness and other experiences in our community. Certainly, public education always has struggled to feel like we're doing what they deserve and everything that we know that they need. We are getting better and better at partnering with our local agencies, around, nonprofits who also support those students and families' needs. We've been creative with our staffing models. Google Translate is a tool that is available to students. We want students to feel like they have access to a variety of different tools at their disposal. It's not an instructional tool that we use for several reasons. But we are constantly working with our registrars, our front office teams. We have a training next week with our administrators on how to support these vulnerable student populations, what we can do, what we can get better, what we need to learn, where we need to grow. And it's something that our community is definitely, we're seeing an increase, and that's exciting, and we're trying to keep up. So yes, that, we have many students in schools that are not hosting dual immersion, that don't have a newcomer program. They still have staffing specifically to support newcomer students. And yes, it's never enough, but we have a newcomer protocol. Anytime a new student shows up, we have a team that pulls together, almost like an IEP team structure: counselor, family liaison, language specialist, building administrator, Office of DEI administrator. And we talk about, what do we know about this family? How can we support? What social services do they need? What mental health needs might they have? What's their pathway to graduation? How do we make sure that they know how to order food in the cafeteria? That's a new one that came up recently, that a newcomer student was not eating because they didn't know how to navigate the cafeteria. So we try to incorporate all of that into the transition as we get new students. But we're always, it's ongoing learning for our whole system.
Just a quick question. I'm super excited about the CP opportunity, and I guess I'm curious, have you heard much feedback from students? I imagine there's a lot of excitement of hearing about this possibility. Any thoughts?
I'm really excited. I think right now we're optimistic and hopeful that this is something that we would be able to pursue, but it would take obviously some additional resources and training. So I would say, in addition to, I would say that most all the pieces are there. So that's the good news. We already have a robust IB program. We already have a lot of kids really interested, a lot of families very interested. We already have a very robust CTE program. We already have 7 or 8 pathways already established. So the bulk of the work is already there. I think that some of the concerns are just making sure that we can put all the pieces in and not feel like we're adding to the plates of our teachers at this point in time. When something feels like more right now, it affects the culture of your school. And although we feel really confident that this is going to be a benefit for the whole community, I think we're just going to be, we're playing it slow, seeing how things play out, and not over promising and under delivering, and until we can find out whether or not we can put all the pieces in place. So decisions haven't been met about whether or not we're going to continue. I would imagine that perhaps in May, if we were to pass a levy, that we might have, that we might be able to open up a further conversation about, further providing additional resources. But obviously, we're not there yet, and so we didn't want to overpromise anything at this point.
Thank you. I'm very excited, and so thanks for sharing all that.
I have a question around DI and the seal of biliteracy. I think there's some confusion on whether students need to be enrolled in the DI program, or do they simply, not simply, or can they pass the test to receive that seal and not be enrolled in DI?
Yes, the state seal of biliteracy, any student who has the language skills in 2 languages can qualify, and we support them across all of our high schools. We've had students now for 7 or 8 years qualifying. We support the testing and then the data submission to the Oregon Department of Ed. And so we've only had 1 cohort of dual immersion graduate high school. So we've had many students not in DI who they typically have had to have pretty advanced study, maybe through IB is one pathway. If you've taken IB tests and scored at a certain level, AP testing is another route. And then our students who speak another language at home, we have some additional testing. If they're not in AP or IB routes, we've got an additional testing opportunity for them. So we've been trying to scoop students now that we have dual immersion up through graduation. We're adding those to the group who's qualifying. But no, it's not dual immersion only. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just the excitement and passion from each of you was really palpable. So thank you for sharing it with us. I have so many questions, but I'm going to let you all go home. And Laura, I loved that description of what a rigorous classroom looks like. It felt to me like the beginning of a rubric or something. And I would just love to hear how, is that a shared vision across our district, or are we heading in that direction, and how do we, that was really beautiful. So I'd love to know what we're doing to try to understand how many of our classrooms are already there and how we get the rest there.
I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
And I Carrie, I think our students have told us we're not there yet. What's interesting is, I put together just, kind of articulated some things that come from the research. And without any discussion with these 3 groups that presented tonight, I think you could hear what I talked about exemplified in these programming. So I think there's a thread that goes through, but we're not there as a district, and it is work that we need to continue doing. I think we've been paying a lot of attention, as we should, to our students who have really been struggling, but all of them deserve a rigorous and relevant education. So it's definitely a priority for us as a leadership team moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's a wonderful vision, and I think it's really helpful for the community to see what we're shooting for. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We will now move on to item 9B, Strategic Priorities Update, led by Superintendent Cook.
Also, we haven't done a good job of prompting questions from our SVC, but please jump in if you have them.
It's always a good sign when everybody gets up to leave when you're getting ready to present. I just want to thank you all. Folks, budget season. It is budget season. This is the official kickoff. And so I'm here to present to you all kind of the current state. And that is I will tell you, I'm so glad you said what you said, Carrie, about Dr. Nordquist's framing of that. I found it absolutely inspiring, and it's what we should achieve for every child in our district. And thank you for sharing that so eloquently, Dr. Nordquist. So let's talk about where we're at, where we're headed. Give some examples of why we're allocating resources. And Paul said it, we just talked about this. This is something he's passionate about. It's something that our kids deserve. It's something that I'm passionate about. And when they presented, first thing I said was, this is amazing and awesome, and let's do it. And we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna pay for it. And so as we talk about, right now we're talking about the things we see as values, and that's what this presentation is about. And it's going to be the foundation of how we start talking about the budget as we think about the next year. And it has that work goes into a strategic plan that would be happening in the next 3-5 years. And so we're here to start today with that first priority statement. So let's start and by the way, these are all new pictures. I want to give credit where credit is due. Scott Maben and Becca Burdick put up a brand new set of pictures. This is a sunset that's not fire. This is a really beautiful sunset. And so let's take a real quick look back. And I think the next slide I want you to linger on, because this slide is so important that we talk about it. There's several things here. The first thing I want you to notice and take into account is the pattern of 49% in the first year of a biennium and 51% in the second year of a biennium. We're entering and starting the budget process for the second year of a biennium, which is actually, in some regards, a really good and predictable metric. We know where we're going to be sitting once we have an enrollment number established. So that 51% of the funding biennium for the 2-year cycle gives us a good runway onto figuring out what our revenues are going to be. And so we're in the middle of that biennium. And so this is year 2. Now, I want to talk about the thing that is glaring. If you look at that third column from the left, the biennial increase, if you notice, we see a percentage once we get out of the recession, starting at, let's start in the 2013-14 biennium. You see a pattern of increased funding that happens biennia over biennia that's pretty predictable and pretty strategically over a 10% increase, with the exception of the 21-23 biennia. Do you see that difference? That number is a critical number I want to draw your attention to, because it's going to come into very, very real play later in our presentation. The reason for the 49-51 split is quite functionally about ongoing costs of running our business, real costs of what it takes year over year for just things that drop down to the bottom line: increased healthcare, increased costs of staffing, raises, all of the things that we have to take into consideration when we build a budget and we consider what are our values and the priorities we're going to be spending our money on. And so when you look at year over year, you see that we go from a 51% on one biennia to a 49% on a following biennia. So when you look at a 9.7% increase in total funding in the 2019 to 2021 biennia, coming out of that one on a 51% of that particular year, and I forget what the total amount is, you could add those 2 years together. Oh, it's $8.9 million coming into 21-23 at $9.3 million. It was actually a decrease in overall funding that year. And I want to draw really specific attention to that, because we had a solution to help get us through that time that was relying upon federal relief, COVID relief dollars known as ESSER, and that'll come up later when we start talking about it. Our current biennia right now, we're on a $10.2 billion statewide educational budget. We'll be moving into our 51% of that in year 2. That's this current year that we're finishing up, that we'll be going into in the 24-25 school year. Thing of note, if you look at our enrollment, Bend and Lapine are expensive places to live in the state of Oregon. This is a statewide trend. We're just on a call today. Overall statewide enrollment for this particular school year has dropped 33,000 students in the state of Oregon. So this trend across the state is consistent. This year's projections, we're right at 17,075 students. We'll, later in this presentation, I'll show you where we're projecting for next year. Our current general fund budget right now, $218 million. We are not here to talk about, except I want to use this to build context, the student investment account in our high school success budget. In fact, on your table, you have a document that is kind of a general breakout of how we allocate those dollars. It's there to give you context on how we fund our general fund, and I'll talk about that a little bit too. There's about a little over $20 million in those two funds for how we are administering to the particular needs and values that are determined by how that money is expected to be spent, both in SIA and in high school success. Before we get into that, let's go back to our values. We still believe in this promise. Every student is known by name, strength, and need, and we are here to help them get to their path, to their best success, to be an important member of our society, be engaged in their community, and to be able to be successful in college or whatever they're going to do afterwards. These programs we just talked about are such great examples of how we're delivering and providing opportunities on those promises. How does that relate to you all? Well, collectively, we have set the vision for this district and what our community values are by creating the board goals that we are delivering all of our services under the auspices of. And you know these well. Goal number 1, we are going to ensure that students are engaged, that they develop a strong academic foundation overall, and we are going to focus on serving all students, including those that have been historically underserved. Goal number 2, we are going to make sure that students can develop over their K-12 career their passion, help them find their purpose, and then build their plan for their future. Also making sure we have systems to ensure that students are not falling through the gaps for marginalized students or any student that has been traditionally underserved. Number 3, our students are going to experience wellness and inclusion in our schools. We want a sense of belonging, a sense of community in every single one of our schools, and we plan for that with our building administrators and their leadership teams to deliver upon those promises. And then last but not least, this is one we talk about a lot. It's not the most dynamic goal in the world, but there's a lot of work that has to happen behind the scenes to keep all those structures in place so that the student outcomes in goals 1, 2, and 3 are as high achieving as they can possibly be. We have a lot of systems that we are working to align and support the work in each of those school communities so that we are delivering on those services most effectively, and we've had a lot of focus on this work as well. Okay, just a reminder that our budget is built around staffing. We have a little under 2,200 staff in our system. About 1,100, I'm doing this from memory, about 1,100 teachers, about 900 classified staff, 20-ish confidential staff, and about 125 building and district administrators across the district. That is most of our budget right there. 85% of our budget is spent on people. So when Paul mentions resources that we're going to need to implement a program with fidelity and effectiveness, and the thing he said that is critical is to not overpromise and underdeliver, but to create the system so that we can be highly successful, just as we were demonstrating tonight in all of these programs. It's on the backs of our employees. It's people that are delivering that work. And so when we talk about increases in spending, decreases in spending, most of the time we're talking about people. Not just people though. There are about 15% of our costs are fixed that we can't impact: utility bills, costs of materials for curricula. We spend millions of dollars on investments in curricula just so that our staff have what they need to be able to support the work they're doing in our classrooms. Power, utilities, lights, buses, you name it. There's funds that we have to invest in that we don't really have the opportunity to raise a lot of change in or reduce when it comes to delivering services based on the enrollment of our schools. So what factors do we have to consider right now before we start talking about, in this season of kickoff for budget work, what are our values that we've just talked about with our goals? what are the conditions that we've got to be mindful of? Number one, we're going to have we project a slight decrease in enrollment. We're graduating a large class this year. Right now, our projections for kindergarten are lower than the class that is coming out. So we anticipate that we're going to have a small decrease in enrollment. The second factor that we've got to consider, the cost of staffing is going up. We gave raises to all groups of our staff this year. That cost is now going to be built into next year's budget. Additionally, PERS increases are built into next year's budget. We're going to have to continue to invest more in PERS. That amount is going up in some cases. Next year, I think, upwards of 2% and higher. Our healthcare costs continue to increase, and all of those have to be factored into the budget we're going to build. Thirdly, and this is what I wanted to make such a big point about earlier, the ESSER funds expire this year, September of 2024. That's 5 months from now, 5 or 6 months from now. Those funds have to be spent. If we don't spend them, they all have to be sent back to the federal government. They cannot be encumbered for the next few years. They have to be spent or returned. So when you go back to that first slide that I lingered on, I don't know, I'm not going to go all the way back, but I'll just say the reason that 3.3% budget, excuse me, I'm going the wrong way now. Yeah. I got it way ahead of myself. How did it go that far ahead? Oh, it's going the wrong way. No wonder. There we go. Somebody help me. There we go. Now I got to go back. Now stop. Okay. No, that's still the wrong one. Okay. There we go. I shouldn't have started. ESSER fund balances ending means the reliance on ESSER funds to make budget work in that 21-23 biennium, today is that reckoning. That's what happened. That's where we're at. I'm not blaming anybody. This is our reality. We have been strategically planning for this. We saw this coming. We started this conversation with you all last year when we said, we're going to have to make some decisions. We're going to have to do what we can to spend down those funds to allow us to use our general fund reserve to make budget moves over the next couple of years. Decreased enrollment, increased costs, the end of ESSER, and using our fund balance as a tool to spread out this ESSER cliff. That's kind of the going language of what we're talking about. That's how we're intending to use the budget to make this year's budget manageable and meaningful for this budget season going into the 24-25 year. Now, I want to talk about this for just a little bit. We have student investment accounts have been around since 2019. They are now fully ramped up. And the reason I want to draw attention to this is because it speaks to how we're delivering upon the promises that we make that live in our board goals that set the vision for our district. If you look at this, there are value statements here, making sure that we're using it to address student health and safety, focusing on reducing class sizes and making sure we have additional staff in our classrooms where the need is the highest, providing access to well-rounded educational experience, and making sure that we're expanding as to the extent we can possible the amount of instruction we're providing. That's the SIA promise. We also have high school success. I'm going to skip this one, try this again, see how I do, and go to high school success, then I'll go back to the fund dollars. Similarly, these dollars are focused on those 3 bullets at the bottom. How do we prevent dropouts? How do we increase the number of students graduating? How do we get kids pushed into career and technical education? We've been talking about this for many, many years now. Kids that take at least one course in a career tech ed pathway are much more likely to graduate. Our graduation rates of students that complete pathways or participate in pathways and linger is upwards of 94%. And so we want to push students into that. And then providing access to college level opportunities for kids. And so what you see in this document that you've got are the ways that we're reflecting the values of our district and how we're spending and allocating those dollars. So if I go back to SIA, adding social emotional supports, whether we're talking about counselors and staffing, bright staffing in our schools, we're talking about clinical technicians, we're talking about EAs, we're investing directly in those actions, and we're using those dollars, those SIA dollars, to make impact in those very meaningful ways. If you go to high school success, Very similarly, one of the things, we talk about this, how can we add more staff into schools where we have traditionally not supported students as effectively, and especially where there's a high propensity of students that have been historically underserved. You see that HU acronym, that's what we use for how we identify where we're going to get targeted staffing decisions made. And an example of this is Lapine High. Let me just give you a really explicit example. Lapine High, according to our staffing models, wouldn't qualify for full allocation of FTE for additional counselors at that school. We gave that full allocation because that we're targeting those funds. And the targeted direction of those positions of additional teachers going into certain schools, not every school, is an explicit decision that we make that helps us reach the goals that we want to deliver upon. So, where are we investing and what are we recommending that we are doing, going to continue to do? I just said the first one. We are going to continue on focusing on our class sizes and making sure that we're putting reductions in the places where we demonstrate the largest need. We can't do it as largely as we did last year because we do not have the same amount of funding sources available, but we can still continue with this initiative. Continuing to invest in mental health supports, and safety investments, campus monitors. We have staff in our schools to support students in crisis. We are going to continue with that. This year we did some shuffling of folks. We had Bright programs in every single school. We still have Bright programs, but we have reallocated to where now there are counselors in schools, in some cases instead, redistributing some of that funding. We're seeing a lot of success with that. And so we're feeling like that's a very successful investment, and we will continue to focus on that. One of the conversations that we were just having a few weeks ago, we continue to get, and it came up as a question tonight, we continue to get newcomer students in our schools. We're going to have to do something about that. We have to add additional resources, and we're going to have to target those resources to be able to meet the needs of those students. And then doing the best we can to continue to increase opportunities for our students. At the end of the day, it always amounts to what's that student experience. It's what our teachers are talking about. It's what our administrators and what our support staff are talking about in our schools. How do we maximize their opportunity, their access, and all the decisions we're making for our schools? So what's next? These next two slides are things you've seen. These are priorities. These are things that we focused on in our strategic planning. These are things we asked our community about whether or not these were values that we are seeing, that our kids and our feedback systems are telling us, we need more of this. Can we add to Career Tech Ed Pathways? Can we fund the CP program at Bend High to give access to more kids? Remember, we just talked about the honors diploma earlier tonight. This is in perfect alignment with the values that we determined were important to us in the passing of that honors diploma policy. Additional elective offerings, adding to advanced academic options, creating pathways for kids so that they have access to AP courses, and then those support systems. What are we going to do to make sure that kids that their needs aren't being met, that we're providing additional resources, whether we're talking about students with special needs, whether we're talking about students that do not speak English as a first language, whatever this might be, providing those resources. Additionally, values that we need to continue to work on to create the environment we desire, which is to be an employer of choice and support our staff and make sure that we are creating conditions in our classrooms and so that our staff know that they're valued, they're cared for, and we want them to stay and work in the community of the students that they serve. Adding those kinds of supports in our systems are important to us. So here's our projections for next year. You'll notice it's slightly down again. 16,934 students. This is our enrollment. This excludes, this is the first year that it would completely exclude Oregon Youth Challenge completely out of the data. So we'll see them not in the enrollment data or in the reporting data at the end of the year. So this is the kickoff of that season, timeline of the budget process. We have several meetings to discuss the process, and then at our June 18th meeting, we would be hoping that we would adopt this budget at that school board meeting. I am glad to answer any questions? And I need, maybe Paul can help me run the clicker next time. Thank you.
Any questions? Student Voice Council? Board? Are we really letting him off this easy? I want to thank you. I believe the board has been asking for some time to have actual numbers presented that align with each of our strategic areas. And I want to just really appreciate the fact that we had budget numbers around specific actions and initiatives and what those allocations are. So thank you very much for that. I think I had one question for you, and that was on the student opportunities piece. I know that you've spoken, and I've adopted your language, Superintendent Cook, around a guaranteed curriculum across our schools. And I know the board has received questions around especially elective offerings. I would say world language is one of them at the middle school that we've heard about. But just in that student opportunities, the degree to which we're looking to ensure not only that there are strong options at a school, but there are equal options across our schools.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of the conversations we're continuing to have is how do we best, the transportation example, Mackenzie briefly touched on it tonight about the fact that we wanted to be able to provide choice access for students all over the district, and how we collaborated with our transportation team to provide access to students. We added routes that now we have kids that are coming from even, we aren't sending buses all the way, but beyond Gilchrist to come to the school district, get on a bus, and then get a transfer bus once they get into town so that they can get to a choice school option that they desired. Being able to provide that kind of access across the district is important for us. How we're going to manage that, I think, is a conversation that we've got to have over the next several years, because we are not in a position where we feel like we're providing enough access across all of our 33 schools, and want to focus on how we can do that better. And so that's important for us. It's going to be a continued conversation. How we do that, just an example, just one example, it's right now, I live right off of Reed Market Road, and because Wilson is under construction for a long time, Reed Market Road, it's really tough to get from the east side to the west side of town right now. And that can become a deciding factor just for things like how am I going to access the programming that I'm desiring or that I would want access to. And so it's conversations that we're considering, and how are we going to make sure opportunities exist for every kid wherever they're coming from. That is your question?
Not quite.
Okay.
Because I believe that's more of an access to choice options, and I'm asking more about making sure that we have guaranteed options at each school around a certain curricular and elective offerings.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna speak to that to some extent. I want to recruit Dr. Nordquist. One of the things that we are working on, and I'll speak specifically to secondary, there's been a lot of investment on getting focused on priority standards, which is going to get us dialed into what that, we'll call it a guaranteed and viable curriculum time and time again, so that whatever K through 12 pathway people go through in our district, they don't have a different set of conditions and experiences. And so that's been a very sustained and ongoing focus of our work. It's going 6 through 12 very well. It exists currently right now in our elementary schools in a very structured and very effective fashion. The likelihood of you experiencing the similar kinds of learning expectations and outcomes is much more prevalent in our elementary schools right now, and that exists well. It is a work in progress. It's improving dramatically across our middle schools and high schools, but it's a continued work in progress, most certainly.
Chair Barnes-Delakia, just to clarify, are you asking about, say, different electives or electives that are available in one school and not in another? Is that specifically? your question?
Especially when we talk about elective offerings at the elementary and middle school, I think there's variability across our schools and whether kids have opportunities for world languages, et cetera.
Okay, so at elementary, it had been the district standard to have PE and music, so not really electives. Those were offered for all students. We have run into challenges with, we've been able to hire PE teachers at all our schools, but we have not. We've had a couple of schools, because they don't have full-time positions, not been able to hire full-time music teachers. So we do have a couple of elementary schools that might have art, for example, as their elective in addition to PE, or some type of arts-related class. At the middle school level, it's a little complicated because, so some of our middle school electives are taught by core teachers, that they have fewer electives than our high schools do, so we have fewer full-time elective teachers. So sometimes elective options are driven by, Ms. Nordquist teaches here and she's able to teach drama or creative writing, but she can't teach Spanish. So that does impact some of our middle school electives. And I think there are some philosophical discussions. We have at least one middle school, for example, where students are required to take a music option in 6th grade, so they're either in choir or band or orchestra. So then they have different elective options with their staffing than a school that doesn't require that. We have not mandated that you have to have French and Spanish, or that you have to require music. I think those are continued discussions, like where are we tight and where are we loose with middle school elective programming, I think is a little bit different, as it is in our high schools. Like Bend High is the only school that has American Sign Language as one of its world languages. I think we have Japanese only in 2 schools, so there are some differences.
Thank you, that's super helpful.
I have a question about, and this may be a question for another time, but I'm curious to hear, like after receiving feedback from teachers, and then also looking to reallocate the budget, do you look at the budget in a way of, I guess, the thing that comes to mind is like pulling the lever to increase counselors would impact increase rigor. Like teachers, having more counselors to handle disruptions in behavior would allow teachers to then spend more time, slower, deeper, like you're talking about. Can you just give us a little glimpse into what that looks like? And again, if this is a question for another time, that's fine too.
No, I don't think it's a question. I think it's a fair question. Let me see if I can do my best to answer that. It goes back to take that $218 million and take it times 0.15. That's money that's the fixed costs that are just to be open. And so the rest of that is how we're going to staff. And so are there levers that we can pull? And so, for example, like that counselor conversation was, let's do some restructuring and let's have some of our schools don't need an entire Fulbright program, would be better served by having counselor access. And so that was a trade out, that was a net neutral change in FTE. And so when we're talking about those levers, we're talking about the 85% of our percent of staff, of dollars that we're spending on staff. And so when we go back to, let's say, for example, a decrease in enrollment, the first thing that's going to happen is there's going to be some levers pulled because the change in our staff, or change in our enrollment is going to change our staffing allocation. And so now we start making decisions based upon what the needs of the system are and how we're going to best respond to that. But that means that's a balanced equation. So if we're going to add here, we're going to subtract over here. And those are real conversations that are happening. across the system. And so I'm not sure we're at a place where I can give you specifics on those decisions, but if we said, for example, we're going to add 10 more counselors, the equivalent cost is going to have to be on the other side of that, is where am I coming up with those dollars that I'm going to have to change to be able to make that decision, or I have to have a new revenue source.
Thank you. And I think that kind of leads me to my, when you talk about areas of investment, like I look at the staff support, and it almost is like they're competing against each other with the reductions that we're going to have to make, and then also trying to invest to recruit and retain teachers. And also, so that piece isn't matching up in my brain.
Absolutely. It doesn't match up because we have to make the budget work.
Right.
We have to live within our means, and our funding model is based upon our average daily weighted enrollment.
Yeah.
And so how those things are in competition with each other is the biggest part of how we build the budget.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, do we need to come up with new outcomes that we're trying to achieve if we know that if these aren't achievable because they contradict what we have to work with?
By outcomes, do you mean the board goals?
Well, just like, yeah, the priorities or the investments. I mean, if it almost feels like because things are shifting and we have reductions, and that it's like setting, yeah. Do they need to be reevaluated?
I think we can do that. I think we can reevaluate what it is that we believe are important. But number one, they have the SIA expectations are non-negotiable, and high school success bullets are non-negotiable. Those things have to be how we administer those dollars. And I think what we're saying is that right now, we still believe that there are best ways to serve this is to continue to do targeted class size approaches rather than to just say everybody gets the same. Yeah. I think there's probably not a lot of other options. I think that I don't necessarily believe that it's accurate to say that our priorities are competing against each other. I think what we're doing in some regards is doing the best we can at our priorities with the limited resources we have. And it's also why we're saying we believe that we need to go to our community and say we think there's a need for more resources. And we continue to advocate to the legislature about the fact that we feel like they're not adequately servicing the community either.
Yeah.
I would like to add, I think on that staff support piece that you're speaking to, Director Chadwick, while we say protect and maintain class sizes, that's really about our target. And I believe, Dr. Nordquist, that right now 50% of our classrooms are several students below the target?
Elementary
In
classrooms.
elementary, yeah.
Our 50% of the classrooms are 3 or more below the staffing allocation targets.
So there's some movement, I think, in that protect and maintain that is about really protecting and maintaining what our targets are in our allocations, but we're actually perhaps have some wiggle room there just to get back to that.
And I would add that the staffing model that we're building for the 24-25 budget right now will be modeled to those class size targets. That is the goal, and we will build that according to the system the best we can. Places that we're going to have to make some decisions are how we're going to, so where's the other side of that equation in that statement? The other side of that equation is we're not going to have as many staffing decisions to be able to target, to be able to impact the places of need across the system. But I would still tell you that even though we've reduced that, that's still the right move, is to use what resources we have that we can target to continue to hit our places that we need more solutions there.
And then Superintendent Cook, on recruiting and retaining teachers, can you remind us of the increase in teacher salary that we've negotiated, and not just teacher, but across our different groups, employee groups, because I believe that we are now the highest paying, or we will be the highest paying district in Central Oregon.
That's correct. With the bargaining that happened over this past 8 months, we now have all 4 of our groups. Well, you approved 2 of them tonight, right? 4 groups. The 2-year, roughly 2-year raise for all 4 groups is about 10.3% over a period of 2 years. And if I'm not mistaken, this is only my 3rd year here, so I'm not sure. There's a possibility I could be proven wrong, but I believe it's the largest raise in the history of the district. And by no means is just pay the only way that you can recruit and retain folks, but we also see a need. I mean, it is so important that we talk about the fact that it is a value that we have, that we want our educators to live and thrive in the community that they work in and the community that they serve. And what does that mean in the long term? And so while we could certainly spend more money if we had more money to spend, I don't necessarily believe that our priorities are the wrong priorities. I just wish we had more resources. And we will continue to do everything in our power to chase those resources, both in our community and at the state level. And federal, thank you.
On that note, I apologize if you said this and I missed it, but can you just remind us, because we will find out about the levy results in the middle of that budget timeline, will we receive a completely revised budget halfway through if the levy passes, or?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned that, so that was exactly the right question. We will have to do some kind of changes in the budget process if we're infused with $20 more million. And so we'll make sure we've got that ready to go when that time comes, if the levy were to pass.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move into action items. And the first action item is a property tax exemption. And Sharon Smith, our land use attorney, will be leading us. And she's
Hello,
virtual.
can you hear me?
We sure can.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Sharon Smith, land use attorney. I'm here today for yet another property tax exemption request, although this is a little different. In the past few times I've been before you, we've been talking about what we call MUPTI. This is not a MUPTI application. This is an application for a nonprofit property tax exemption. It's been submitted by the Central Oregon Veteran and Community Outreach Organization, COVO, and this is specifically for affordable housing for veterans and families. And the request is for 8 tax lots to be not subject to property tax. And as many of you probably know, COVO provides a lot of assistance to veterans and their families, and this is specifically for their affordable housing program. So I'm asking for you to adopt the resolution to approve the property tax exemption for COVO. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? I will seek a movement to adopt.
I move to adopt the resolution approving the property tax exemption for COVO.
I second.
Thank you. Director Chadwick has moved. Director Fisher has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no request for further discussion, I will move to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
We'll now move into board discussion. People are like, don't want to listen to you. Tonight, we have a board discussion item, which is for the Board of Directors' work and priorities. I have placed this on our agenda because Board meetings are the single time where all 7 or 6 or however many of us are there at a board meeting, but the only time that we can actually have a conversation around something that could lead to action together. And so I placed this on our agenda. I wanted to share that what we're really looking at is how we as a board can be the most effective we can be as servants of the public because the public elected us. And then how can we make sure that our work is supporting the district and collaborating with our cabinet, and how can we be the best collaborators we can be with the district and with the cabinet that are doing the actual real hard work of lifting the priorities. And so I took time and interviewed different board members, all of our board members over the last month. And I want to share a couple of themes before I open to discussion. One of the things I asked people is about what they expected when they ran for board of directors. And I think pretty uniformly, there's an expectation that you're doing a lot more than you do. Because under our model, which is the Carver model for governance, it's a policy governance. We set policies, we set goals, and we evaluate our superintendent. We don't say, I'm going to get the class sizes reduced, or I'm going to have this curriculum adopted. That's actually not our role. And so while we each may come with a passion, what we actually do as a board is we work together as a team of 7, I would say 8 and 9 with our board, our superintendent and our board clerk, but we work together to oversee the work in the direction that the district is going. And so that was a pretty uniform kind of aha moment for any person who's ever run for board. Next, I asked about the priorities and whether our priorities were the correct priorities. And pretty uniformly, I mean, not pretty, uniformly, our board of directors felt that the priorities that we have set are the right priorities. The place that there was sometimes some disconnect was whether or not we're pursuing the most pressing actions in each of those priorities, and whether or not we have a fully built out system for measuring growth. And we have not had benchmark data for quite some time. Dave Van Loo used to have incredible dashboards with 3-year trends and 1 year and et cetera. But we really, because of the pandemic and we didn't have any data for so long, we haven't had benchmark goals. And that was pretty uniform across our board, that we really need to get back to having some goals that we're aiming for and actually have data that we're tracking over time. Next, we talked about board meetings and how we can make sure that, that board meetings are effective in serving our community. We didn't talk about it, I interviewed people, but the feedback I got was, how do we make sure our meetings are effective and that they really feel useful for our board, for our community, and for our cabinet that sits here every other Tuesday night and presents to us. And so how do we make sure that we build a cycle as we look at the next year, the 24-25 year, where the board is engaged, is fully engaged and walks away feeling fully engaged from board meetings, but that there's purpose for our cabinet too, and that it feels purposeful. And so how do we work together on those different pieces? And so I'm going to stop there on kind of the summary, but I'd love to hear from our board members as we think about how we want to look towards next year. We're going to be going into the planning process for next year. Superintendent Cook just shared strategic priorities from a budget perspective, but in May, he'll be presenting strategic priorities for us for the coming year. How do we think together, and are there specific asks that you would make of me, of the board, of our community, of our cabinet, to help us make sure that we have a really strong cycle for the 24-25 school year.
I would like to see more opportunities for us to talk together. I think that that doesn't happen as often as it needs to. Yeah, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like we are given presentations that are, 5-10 minutes on topics that we really don't have a deep understanding of, and we're expected to approve things when we don't necessarily have the background knowledge we need. So sometimes it feels like rubber stamping. And, part of that is the Carver model, that we don't do that much, but at the same time, that doesn't feel great as a board member. And I feel like some of our issues are really intersectional, and we don't always talk about them because we divide them out into various nice brackets. Like, I would really like to see us have a really robust conversation around technology use in our classroom and the impacts of that on mental health and behavior, because I think there's a lot of research and data out there about that. And I know, like, Dr. Kate Broadman gave a great presentation to Pacific Crest, and Pacific Crest is instituting new rules around the use of iPads in their school. And those types of conversations, I feel like we don't have at this level, but that's so impactful to the work that we're doing. But we have technology over here and we have mental health over here. And like, we have PE, where does PE live? But we know PE is also foundational for mental health, and there are some really cool things happening in PE and physical education in our schools. I would love for us to have bigger conversations than 10-minute presentations.
First of all, thank you for facilitating this conversation. This feels like the kind of conversation that I'd love to have more of. And thank you for the pre-work of interviewing us and presenting some trends, because that is really helpful. I really agree with all the trends that you presented, and would just like to double tap on a few. Really want to see us have data benchmarks and be looking at them throughout the year. And as you said, trends over time and subgroups. Sometimes the cycle feels really long between, sometimes it's a year between when we look at a certain data metric, and that just doesn't feel urgent enough for what our students deserve and need us to be monitoring. So really want us to work on that. I love just the reminder to all of us that for the amount of time that is spent both preparing for these meetings and at these meetings, and a reminder that we are a leadership team of everyone in this room. If it doesn't feel useful for cabinet and for Steve and for us, then we should reassess, which is what we're doing, which is great. I think tonight is a great example where those presentations were so inspiring. I loved learning about those 3 programs. Everything about that was wonderful, except we're going to be here for a long time tonight. And so I definitely felt like I would like to ask and feel like it's probably my duty as a community representative to ask a lot of questions and really dig in. But if all 7 of that did, if all 7 of us did that for every presentation, we would be here until midnight. And it still wouldn't necessarily feel like are a bunch of one-time questions the best way for us to workshop continuous improvement of our organization. I don't think so. I don't know what is, but I love that framing of how can we use this time? You start every meeting, Melissa, by reminding us that this is a meeting in public, but not with the public. This is our meeting. And how can we use this time, as Amy said, to really dig into these tough, no one's figured this out across the country, or we'd just be doing what they were doing. So yeah, not great suggestions, but really appreciate the conversation and the framing and the desire to make this time feel really useful and efficacious for all of us.
I guess I also want to say that I would love to hear more from students. I mean, having y'all here is, I think, a great step in the right direction. But when I think about the feedback that we hear, or the experiences of students at our like Latinx family night, or like that depth, and how all of this stuff impacts y'all, and are there other things that we need to be focusing on instead or more of? And so y'all tell your friends that, like, we love hearing from students. Like, we want to hear directly from you. Yeah. Yeah, seriously, I mean, and feedback that I've also received is that when students do come to speak to us, like you're saying, Carrie, like, we don't have a lot of time to just right on the spot give feedback, but presenters want that, especially student presenters want that. And so I kind of feel like they spend all this time preparing, like you're saying, and imagine what that's like for students to do that, and then we're like, hey, great. But like to have more of that really like genuine time to collaborate and hear more, and to, yeah, hear what we think.
Can I add something? Is that okay? Please. I was just gonna say, like, you were talking about how, like, you love to hear from students, and I would say it's the same from the student's perspective, is that just increasing that communication, I think, is just really beneficial. And I think goes back to, like, what I was talking about earlier, it's just, like, communication just solves so many issues. And I know a lot of students, like, in our schools, like, if given the opportunity, and I know they're given the opportunities, like, they're welcome to come speak at board meetings, but for many that's kind of daunting. But I know that many, if they're really like given opportunities to come and speak, that's something that they'll definitely take advantage of. So I just,
Well, and I would say, you know, something to take back to your, you know, classmates is we love being invited to things. You know, I think it was in the spring, I went to Realms and sat with a group of students, and, you know, they took the initiative. They wanted to show me around the school, all the cool things they were doing. And then we sat down together for an hour, and they told me what was working, what wasn't working. And it was feedback that I brought back here. And so if your classmates, you know, want us to come to a class, and I was in Bentai the first year on the board giving a talk about being a nurse practitioner, you know, and it was super fun. So if you guys want us to come, invite us too, because we all take those opportunities.
yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely something, like, moving forward, when we just increase general awareness of, like, the Student Voice Council, also increasing the awareness that, like, you guys are open here as, like, a resource, as, like, if people have something that they want to talk about, that there's an outlet for that.
On that, I do want to hit on a couple of themes to share with Superintendent Cook, as well as more broadly. But the invitation theme came up a lot, and there was a wondering from several board members if there's a master calendar of like school events anywhere that we might be able to be tapped into, so that we could know when a certain school is having a play or an event at their school. But if there is anything like that, or it's in the works, we would love to be added to that. Second, while this board does not have any standing committees outside of the budget committee, if there are committees of the superintendent, or different opportunities where a board member voice could be utilized, we would love to hear about that. And then we will work to make sure that there is equal opportunity, and that there's a rotation from our board members serving on that as well. And so I think those are, you know, those were two pieces for us as well. Am I missing anything that came up? I would say the last thing, I'm looking at our cabinet, but however we might want to do it, there was a great suggestion of whether we would ever want to have a joint retreat between the board and cabinet, just to dive into work, but also you build relational trust from doing the work together, and wanting to, we would invite any opportunity to work with the cabinet, and I would invite any opportunities to speak with any member of the cabinet to get your input on our board meetings as well. If it's okay with Superintendent Cook, I have to ask him first. But I would welcome the opportunity to speak with you as well.
I think just one more, I can't remember now if it was a suggestion I made or something that you shared that I thought was a good idea, but having anyone that's making a presentation, having them start the presentation with giving some clarity to the board about what would be helpful, what type of discussion or feedback would be helpful for them. Like, this is, I really am just presenting a success that I want you to know about versus like, I'm gonna have, I have a question at the end that I'm really struggling with and I'd actually like to workshop it, or I'd love you to put on your parent hats, and like just some direction from the person giving the presentation of what might be useful to them. Again, thinking like if they're taking the time to present, is there anything that would be helpful or make that feel like time well spent to them as well?
I have a question. I am not sure how long the structure of the 2 meetings per month with the workshop model and the business model. I'm not sure that that is a trend, a requirement, or something that we have the opportunity to maybe talk some more about. We have the time, and if we can incorporate more of some of the other suggestions somehow in that time. We also have so many legal requirements. So we have those meetings that, like the end of the year, where, where we've got 20 motions to make to approve something. I don't know that there's a way to separate program stuff from legal requirement stuff. And we do that to an extent on the agenda, by consent agenda in business and consent for information. But I'm wondering if we could go even further with that and use our time. When you ask the question, can we better use our time, or is there a way? Somehow, those 2 meetings ought to be able to, in my experience, 2 meetings a month ought to be able to accommodate some of the things that we're talking about. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know exactly what the model would be, but do we have some flexibility with talking about that?
Yeah, and to piggyback off that comment, I kind of feel like sometimes the workshops are a little light and there's a lot more work that we could do during them, and get into more robust conversation about a variety of topics. So I feel like that time could be better utilized.
I think we have 12 business.
Can I opine on that one a little bit? I think one of the things we struggle with workshops is that we never know the level of engagement. And I think there are times where we've got this much built out and then we wind up with this much because of discussion. And then there are times when it's this much and it's over when it's over. And so I think I'm certain, I don't want to speak for our team, but I'm certain that we've got to meet our legal expectations for the year. We can get more efficient. I think we have to be careful not to get too efficient because much of our work needs to be done in public. And how that would happen, we would still need that to continue to happen, but I think we could capture some time. But I think the point you make is an important one. How we start to anticipate when and where the engagement is going to happen is where we need to get a better pulse of the conversation.
I wonder,
So I was just going to say, one of the issues often with the workshop is we don't, as board, know what the topics are going to be until right before the meeting. And I will tell you, I am reading this textbook, my first time reading a textbook in 12 years, because I was prepared for a conversation about tag tonight. You want me to get into a topic, I'm going to get into a topic. But when we get the agenda on Friday before the meeting on Tuesday, I can't order a book, I can't get into articles, I can't do the research I need to necessarily have the type of conversation that I think is warranted in this space. And so, you know, maybe with the workshops, if we got the topic 6 months in advance, so if there is something like, I'm like, oh, I don't know much about that, but that's something I'm really interested in, I want to be able to dig in on it, I want to be able to buy a book and read it or go to the library. I think that would make those meetings a lot more meaningful as well.
We'd be glad to give you 6 months advance notice on our topics.
Melissa's like, wait.
3 months?
Marcus and I would like to say 3 months, I think. I'm going to speak for him, but
some
absolutely, and
room
I've been
for
trying to do
just
some
in
update,
time.
but yeah, I think quarterly topics is absolutely doable.
Yeah, I just had an idea because, you know, one thing that we need to remember is that board meetings are supposed to be board-led, and we rely a lot on the staff at this point. And so I just had a wondering if for the workshops, if we each took one and like partnered with the staff person on that topic and actually like helped prepare and provided some input into what would feel useful as a board member and like took some more joint ownership over those workshops. And then that way each board member would have the chance to like really dig in on one work session a year. I don't know, just an idea, but like I would like to take more ownership as a board member for how we spend our time, but I don't really know how to do that. And I can't do it for every board meeting, but I could absolutely commit to making sure that one was really good.
I'd like to add, I think this conversation is worthy of a workshop, as opposed to at the end of a, 4-hour sitting here. And I think yeah, I think it would be really helpful to take a chunk of workshop time to really dig into this whole conversation, because they're great themes and worth talking about.
Could I possibly ask a question a little bit off topic about the student communication? So at our school, at Bend High at least, we have a resource called the Future Center, and it's really good for students find it as a great resource for speaking to college counselors, like college counselor representatives come from schools. They're able to communicate with the students directly and also just give input on the schools. And it's actually a surprising number of people that actually go to those, because the school kind of explains that it's going to be like after school or at lunch, whatever the time is, they give information on how students can be a part of that. So I don't know exactly, as you're saying, Mr. Cook, as you're saying, like there's a definitely, or there's limitations for how much you can speak out of the board meeting. So I don't know exactly what those regulations are, but I can imagine I can only imagine it'd be a great opportunity if, especially as Daly was saying, it could be daunting to come up to the board and actually speak, but to go to different high schools, maybe even on a scheduled basis, I think it'd be a very good resource to reach out to students that way and have open communication with them and have them ask questions. But again, I don't know exactly if there's limitations on that, how much you can speak outside the boardroom, but that's just an idea.
We can do that. Sure can.
We just can't all come without it being a public meeting. It's quorum. So, 1, 2 of us, always.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Director Fisher, for that piece. I consider this the beginning, not the end, and I am looking at some different themes for our board retreat. And I think that we could take a full workshop and really dig into this more. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Superintendent Cook for his report.
Trying to get an answer of a question real quick. Okay. It's important to know the answer to that question before I do my superintendent's report. I just have 2 items, and I'm sorry, I was taking notes on something else, so I've got to go back. Guys, I wrote a lot of notes, so I had to go back a lot of pages. Okay, my superintendent's report, two things. I want to talk a little bit about the work of the task force continues. It is meaningful work. We had, we spent the entire group time into 3 leveled areas, and we spent a lot of focus on how do we dial in on the needs of each area. So we had a elementary group, a middle group, and a high group. Elementary group, I'm going to ask Laura to step in and she doesn't know I'm asking this, so I'm hitting her on the spot, just to talk a little bit briefly on what the elementary group was right after I even get done with doing the middle school update and the high school update. The high school update was getting common language across all of our high schools as it relates to the expectations that we've agreed upon. That group is really getting intentional. I'm on that. We all of us got assigned to some level or another. And our high school teachers and staff are really diving into this, and it's really meaningful. Middle school is also diving in. We had an infuse, I think, of 6 new members, I want to say. And so they're doing a lot of group reestablishment because that's a group that had a lot of new teachers involved. Looking for great things to come out of that. I just want to make sure that you know that that work is ongoing, it's impactful, and there's lots of follow-up with it. And elementary, can you share?
I think the major focus of the elementary group when we met last week was really looking at assessing where we are school to school when we think about how does this spread across the system. So looking at some simple evaluation tools for maybe a small group of the committee, you know, a couple teachers, a couple EAs to go in and kind of assess like where are our schools and what needs to happen next.
And then my second report is just, I just want to talk about administrative hiring. I'm really feeling positive about how that process is going. We have, since our last meeting, we have offered 3 interim principals. We've offered them permanent positions after very extensive interview processes, and they were all successful. Ben Johnston at Elk Meadow, Jesse Rasmussen at Jewel, Mark Zollinger at Bear Creek. And then I also want to mention that we hired Beth Martin, who we've been talking with for almost 2 years now. She is going to be the principal at North Star. And the process for how that's going has been highly effective. We've still got a couple of things to work on. Summit is still is getting close to being wrapped up, and look for news on that. And then I just want to make sure you're aware that we have reposted our deputy superintendent position as we will be going back out to see what is out there. So glad to answer any questions you might have.
Great. If there's no questions, I'll go to the board chair report, which is there isn't one, because it was the board discussion. Woohoo! Grabbed time. Director comments. We'll start with Director Olson.
Just thanks for the opportunity and putting that on the agenda, Melissa, so that we could have a few minutes to think and talk, knowing that we would like to extend that. The other thing is the wonderful presentations tonight of those 3 programs, well, combination of 3 programs. Thanks, because we will never know all the things that are going on in every school. And so to be able to highlight some of those is very special. Thank you.
No comment?
Just wanted to say the 5th graders at Lava Ridge last week had an awesome field trip to the Sun River Nature Center, and that was really cool seeing all the telescopes and then also the success of the Life Career Night at Caldera last week. Was that last week? Oh my God. It was awesome just to see so many students there, so many community partners, and yeah, to know that that was just the first year and it happened so well. Looking forward to that again.
Yeah, I want to say I'm looking forward to hopefully a really robust conversation about tag education next month. The book that I'm reading had some pretty shocking stats that I'm not sure that people are aware of. I've heard people say in this district that tag kids graduate at high rates, so they're doing well. But that's not necessarily what the evidence shows in this book from looking at the literature on the topic. 9 to 20% of kids who drop out of school are tag identified, but they are bored. Tag kids, 80% of them report learning nothing new on an average school day, which was definitely my daughter's experience throughout most of elementary school and now in middle school. And in elementary school, 80% of tag kids, nothing new on I think I said that first, 80% nothing new on an average school day and nothing new until January because so much of it is repetitious. So this is definitely a group of kids that we just assume they're gonna do okay, but that's not always what the research shows. And it's also a group that has large amounts of neurodiversity in it. And so there's an overlap with SPED services. And I don't think we are serving this group well. I had a conversation with a patient. A lot of my patients, we become friendly with each other, working very closely together. And I have some who ask me all the time, oh, what are you doing on the board? Because they're really interested in education. And I said, oh, I'm actually reading a book about tag. And I said, yeah, 9 to 20% of tag kids drop out because they're bored in school. And this particular mother said, that was my oldest daughter. She was identified as gifted in elementary school, and she was bored out of her mind. And by the time she got to middle school, she started using drugs and didn't care, and she dropped out and got a GED. This is a kid we lost because we did not challenge them. And academic rigor and excellence is part of our board goals. And right now we fail in some ways. And I think we see that reflected in parents choosing private school for their kids. Frankly, this year we've talked about private school for my daughter, but as employees of a public school and board members of a public school, I don't feel that that is an ethical decision I can make. So I'm here soldiering and fighting for all of our kids to get the services they deserve. And so I hope next month we can have a really strong conversation around that, because I think it's really important. And I think elevating academics for not one group elevates them for all groups. And right now we're missing a lot of that. And I think our families want that.
Thank you. I have a couple of appreciations. My first appreciation is to our Director of Communications, Scott Mabin. We very rapidly passed a levy or didn't pass a levy, gosh, hopeful thinking. We passed a resolution to put a levy forward to our public at our board meeting, and then had to, in rapid success, put out a lot of informational literature, including on our website, et cetera, so that our community can know exactly what we want. Scott has been working weekends on this, and so I just want to really appreciate your work on all of the information that you're providing for our public so that they can make an informed decision on our levy. Second, I want to appreciate Lakeisha, who was here, the principal of BTA. Not once, but twice, I was talking to somebody in the last 2 weeks who said, oh, I always ask people, I'm like super nosy. I'm like, where do your kids go? BTA. I'm like, oh, what do they think of Lakeisha? Love their principal. And so it was really fun to be out in the community and just hear rave reviews about a program that we got to hear from tonight. And then my last one is actually to Paul Hutter at Ben Senior High, just on a personal note, actually. He spent some time with me talking about the IB and CP program as I'm thinking about my own kids. So I just really appreciate Paul taking that time. And with that said, our budget committee and next regular business meeting are scheduled for April 9th, and this meeting is adjourned.